Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I'm here today with Daniel Naor to talk about the spiritual blessing in loosening up. And it's a funny thing to talk about, even on a spiritual level, to bring the idea of being fixed, rigid, routine-oriented, to have your coffee a certain way, and to have to anytime we find ourselves in a thought of have to, in a response of have to, even should, can often come from misguided places. And because we are smack dab in the middle of the month of Taurus on the Kabbalistic calendar, we thought it's a great opportunity to share not only the challenges and the hidden blockages that we might unconsciously be creating by having fixations on the way things need to be and keeping our comfort zone with barbed wire and high security cameras, making sure no one comes in or comes out, but really the hidden ways that those routines and that rigidity sometimes gets in our way, as well as ways to shift out of needing that tight hold on how things are done and said and executed. So if you've been listening to Weekly Energy Boost for any period of time, you know Daniel Naor is the best person to come and help us break down misconceptions and belief systems and introduce new ways of thinking that can bring us to greater places of healing and fulfillment. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where we bring our audience the most powerful and practical tools from the wisdom of Kabbalah to help you navigate the coming 7 days. And in providing you with the navigation tips and tools for the coming week, we inevitably share wisdom and tools that you can use anytime, really. And today is no different, right? You may be Taurus and listening, but even if you're not Taurus, you're living in the month of Taurus and consciously or unconsciously influenced by that. So that's really the starting point. The Kabbalists teach that the way to take advantage of the opportunities of a month is to resist the tendency to behave like that sign. Not good, not bad, not, it's not about malice or evil. It's really learning to rise above the influences of the energy around us. So that's where we begin today's conversation. Daniel, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you
Back
for
by
having
popular
me.
demand.
Back. That's right.
So why is this such a thing for people? I feel, even just in thinking about it for myself, it's such a subtle, unconscious, I don't know if the word is compulsion, but habit to have things a certain way, even when it comes to spiritual practice and connection.
Yes. So we're creatures of habit, and we always want to look into the part that is good about that and is serving us and perhaps is needed, but also to address the limiting factors of these. So I think it's something very interesting. And if we look at the root of it, where it might come from, like the need for routine and structure. Look, Alicia, we live in a very uncertain world in which nothing is predictable. Everything is unpredictable. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of fear base in media and society. So this need to have a structure and this need to feel safe is huge, and it's also human. Now, on top of that, what we're conditioned from media and society, we also are conditioned from our own experiences, from our own life experiences where perhaps we didn't feel safe. And here we're going into tikkun and childhood experiences related to that tikkun in our family. So I think, these days we hear a lot about morning routines, and everybody is so excited to share their morning routine, and we're comparing morning routine.
7 habits of highly successful people, right? It's about habit and routine and structure in so
Exactly.
many ways.
And there's such a need for that, right? And we want to explore where it's coming from. And again, what part of it can we use in a constructive way, and what part it can be an obsession, and it might block us from actually touching points that need to be touched and need to be seen. Sometimes it can build up a protection zone that doesn't allow us to look at something that needs to be addressed. And I'll explain and give examples. But again, sometimes we look up to people that have this certain, we call it discipline, right? It's like, oh, if I only had that discipline, wow, they're waking up every morning at 4 a.m. Wow, and they're only drinking green juice and they're doing 25 push-ups right when they wake up, and then the cold shower. And it's like, you look at these people and sometimes you're like, wow, they're very disciplined. But sometimes, and again, not labeling or judging anything, whatever morning routine you have and it works for you, it's great. And I have more routines, and routines are important. We're not belittling routines in any way. But another perspective that I want to offer in this, because sometimes if you look into people's life and you see these routines turn into slight obsessions, these obsessions can turn into a certain rigidness. I'll share with you something. I talked with a few years ago with someone who was deeply involved into macrobiotic eating. And that individual immersed himself in the community of people that eat that way and eat a healthy way. And amongst that community, there was an individual that was taking in even other approach. It was eating raw. Okay. Not to go into all the diets and all the different, it's endless, right? But I found it interesting, and it stayed with me, what she has reported and found out from her experience. She realized that many of the people that she hanged out with at that time in that community that ate raw, she felt and saw that they also, in their behavior, there was a certain coldness to them. So they didn't eat warm food, and it started to become like they themselves, in their attributes, in their quality, in their energy, it felt cold and distance. Wow. So why am I bringing this up is because sometimes, the things that we look up to and praise about others, oh, you're so disciplined, sometimes we need to ask, what's behind that? What drove a person to become so disciplined and what happens when they don't have that? Does their world collapse? Do they start to become even more reactive? Like, I work with many people, and so I have an individual in mind in which, certain person entered their life, and that person started to not be so aligned with their routine, and it created such friction. It was such a point of upset where it was like a major cause of disconnect. So what happens when my routine is being challenged? You take my routine away, like my safety zone, my order, the sense of control suddenly starts to collapse, right? So what we're saying with this is routine is good if it gives me a form of order and structure, but it cannot become my life. When it starts to become my life and take over, first of all, it can cause all kinds of disconnect between me and other people, but more importantly, we can explore this further. I want to give you a chance to add your part or ask questions, but because this can go even deeper. And the question is, what is the routine that I set up for myself? Is there a possibility that it's trying, or that I'm trying, that I hide behind the routine and it's protecting me from a wound or pain that I'm not willing to go to or to touch or to address or to see, and I hide behind those routines and structures that I establish for myself?
So if you've ever heard Daniel on Weekly Energy Boost, you know that I always feel like he's giving me a personal session, private one-on-one.
Never intended, Elisheva.
Adjustment, consciousness adjustment. I'm smiling while I'm listening, not because I honestly, I don't, well, let's back up because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. Right. Part of the conversation, the Daniel shared with me about this idea was its relation to the month of Taurus, and the people born under the sign of Taurus, and also the other earth signs, by the way, we don't want to leave them out, Virgo and Capricorn, they also have a certain not only gift for order and structure, but sometimes our gifts, as Daniel is sharing, can be a downfall, that sometimes it's to the point of rigidity. It can often interfere in relationships that need for the structure and the order and the cleanliness. And I personally am born, my Kabbalistic astrology chart shows that I have no earth in my chart. Not really, I mean, you can say what you want about what that means, but for me personally—
Welcome to the club.
Really, you too, Daniel?
I think I have maybe one planet or
so there's about 15 or 16 places you can have planets in your chart. All of mine are in water. Some of them are in air, and I have 2 in fire. So very much call me a natural spring, if you will, a waterfall. So I found that in my life personally, it's very hard for me to stick to routine and structure. But also when I do, it allows me to, meaning the reactive part of me doesn't like it. It's not natural for me. I like to improvise. I like to go with the flow. I like to channel whatever comes, let the light decide, which can be very reactive also. It's a place where I don't have to take responsibility. However it turns out, depending on the situation. Obviously, the intention is positive, but sometimes it can be taken to an extreme, like Daniel said before, about letting those routines define me or become a crutch to avoid dealing with something else. Well, what's funny is once I manage to create and implement a structure, one that serves me, it really allows an even greater level of flow, channeling, creation, initiation, being the cause in my own life when I have parameters to stick to, when I have points to stick to, when I have guidelines versus, and I see how it's perfect for me in this lifetime. And that's the point that I want to make sure that everybody sees in the bigger picture, is that whether you resonate with what we're talking about, it speaks to you, or you see how you yourself can fall into this tendency that Daniel's describing, and I'm sure there's more. Part of the reason that we fall into these tendencies and habits is not to be held back, but really so that we can rise above them. And the teachings of Kabbalah, I received an email from a listener in the last couple of weeks that was asking if we can talk about, why one would choose a particularly difficult childhood or traumatic situation growing up. Why would that be for their benefit? And I thought, my goodness, you could write volumes to answer that question. I don't think one episode would even do it justice. But at the same time, every episode talks about that, right? We learn in Kabbalah that the way we were raised and how we learn to cope and survive and thrive is exactly what we need to ensure our optimum success in fulfilling our soul's purpose as adults. It doesn't always look fair. It's not always comfortable. It's sometimes painful and very difficult. However, there's a divine purpose in it being that way, because without that upbringing, we wouldn't be equipped to heal and transform the baggage we've been bringing with us throughout lifetimes. So I think it's important for, especially, I know somebody inevitably is listening to this episode. It's their first weekly energy boost. And what the heck are these guys talking about? We always go to big picture, and then how does it affect me? How can I use it? What's in it for me? So the big picture here is that these influences and tendencies are perfect, are exactly what we need for the sake of transcending and healing and growing. So I know, again, for me, learning those structures and getting up early, it's the hardest thing in the world. And it's definitely not easy for me to stick to, but I do see how I really do better once I'm able to stick with them. And I want to just show the other side of the coin of that, right now, I think everyone is resonating on some level, whether they need the structure or they lack the structure. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's all depends on how we're using it, right? So if my view of the structure routine is it's a resource, you know. It's a tool, but that's all it is. And I can use it wisely. I can use it to create a sense of safety. I can create it to use a sense of order and a sense of control. As long as it's in service to me, the danger only becomes right when I start to become in service to my routine and the structure that I built.
At the mercy of your routine.
Yeah, then I start to be enslaved to it. But not just that. Let's touch these two other important points, which is, what is the cost for holding on and being controlled by my routine? Two main things. Number one, sometimes it won't allow me to heal something that I'm carrying with me. So if there's a certain pain from the past, certain unmet needs from my childhood, certain hurt, certain neglect, certain unworthiness, or whatever it is that is the nature of our soul's lesson to learn here in this life. And I found a way to survive, okay, and I adopted at some point a discipline, a structure, or just to cope with life, just to survive. 100%, like you said, that is what was needed at that time, and it has served me. But when I continue with that, and I use it as a way to continue to just survive or to get going without healing that which still needs to be healed, then I will always rely on that discipline, the order, the structure, the routine of what to do, canceling everything. Everything is so tight, my schedule, my time, everything. And it gives me this sense of like also productivity that I'm doing that can compensate for another lack. But at some point, the universe won't allow us to go through life being the same people. We came here to transform. We came here as person A and check out as person B. We came here to be different. We came here to evolve. Life is all about change. So we cannot hold on to the stability when it's reactive like that for too long without changing. So the universe will break down that structure. Something will happen. I will meet a new person that will challenge my routine. Something, and it doesn't mean that I need to break it all down and I cannot use any of that, but the attachment to it, right? As a compensation for looking at something else. So that is one aspect. And the second aspect is also, at certain point, a person like that probably might feel that the lack of something new. When we don't rejuvenate ourselves, when we don't evolve in that sense, there's something inside of us, if we're sensitive enough, that we'll start to feel that it's stale, it's old. The other thing about routine structure and when to an extreme case rigidity is that it doesn't allow change. It doesn't integrate new thoughts, new ideas outside of the box. When I'm all day in the box, there's no opening for creativity and new ideas and change and better things too. And better things too. So we want to ask ourselves this question: how open am I to allow new ideas to come in? How much space do I create within all the structure that I built for myself? And by the way, rigidity is not just rigidity in physical rigidity. There can be a rigidity of thought. For instance, when we become rigid in thought, a rigid thought or a rigid belief can be all men are the same. All women are the same. All
salespeople are the same.
All salespeople are the same. Life is difficult. What can you do? Right. My grandfather would always say, life is not a picnic. It's like, it is what it is. You do the best with it. Like there's certain ideas that we might have adopted at some point that we can really protect with that. And we're not flexible. We're not fluid enough to have different perspective, different points of view. We get stuck in a very specific point of view that leaves no room for growth and change. And that's the second danger of that.
I'm listening to you, and I'm also thinking about within the teachings of Kabbalah, there is a lot of structure where we're guided to dedicate specific and regular time for prayer and meditation, to dedicate specific time for study. We follow a calendar that is very specific, right? We're going to talk about in a minute a window of time that's opening up this weekend that's very powerful. And when it closes, is that energy available? It is available, but in a diminished amount compared to how much it's available on Sunday. So how do you reconcile how structured the universe is, how structured the practice and the wisdom is with the flow, being open for new things, new ways, new ideas, when here you have this thousands of year old wisdom that hasn't changed a bit, and the structure that it provides us, the rules of the game of life, and yet the flow is such an essential part to being spiritual.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful, right? Because the universe is perfect and creation is perfect, but we are humans and life is messy, right? Life is not perfect, at least not in ours, in our experience. So part of it is also to allow ourselves to be a little bit more human in that sense, whereby, there's always the exception. There's always the gray zone, right? So we can see it also on spiritual path, on even with Kabbalah, that Elisheva, and I'm sure you can relate to that too. Have you seen people in which, they try so hard to follow the path, and how do they turn out? How do people turn out from your experience, Elisheva, that try so hard to do everything right, to follow all what the teacher said, from the class, and using all the tools and do it exactly and precise and doing it perfectly? What happens to a person like that? That is true.
It's a recipe for misery. It's not enlightenment. It's in darkening. It's not enlightening.
And so while all of that is available, right, when we become too meticulous with the structure and the order, we lose sight of what's the purpose. I remember one of our, of our teacher's birthday speech. He said, we have all these tools, we have all these meditations and this wisdom and the depth. But he said, at the end of the day, you know what it really comes down to? All of this is just to get to one place of love. So it's also something to wake us up, to gauge all the routine that I established for my spiritual routines, my physical routines, my diet, my exercise, any routine, right? But here you're bringing even the spiritual routine. Is it bringing me closer to love? Is it bringing me closer to love myself? Is it bringing me closer to feel more harmony and oneness with others? And if the answer is no, that there's something off about the way I'm using those tools, the spiritual tools, and the wisdom and any type of routine and order and structure that I try to create for myself.
Is there any advice or tips you can give people this week? I mean, we have 2 weeks left of the month of Taurus, so I think it's a more open question than we normally ask for a specific week, but it's not even a conversation that needs to end in 2 weeks. We just have a heightened opportunity now. What if someone out there is listening and saying, wow, that's me. I am a slave to my routine. My routine defines who I am, how I freak out when things don't go according to my structure or my expectation. What would be your advice to them?
2 things, maybe. One thing, to review, to reflect. We need to take time to reflect. There's another thing that I noticed that we oftentimes don't do enough, to take the time to reflect, to think about, to really see about my routine or my structure and my order. What part of it is it trying to protect me from, that I, up until now, perhaps wasn't willing to look at? what type of feeling of unsafety, feeling of unworthiness, feeling something that I've been trying to push away, and the routine covered it up so that I don't need to go there. What is it potentially covering up for? And it might not be for everybody, but you might find something there. So that requires deeper work and reflection, okay? But the other thing, maybe on a more lighter note and practical note too, is if you feel that you become too attached to it and you're in service to it and the routine is not in service to you, and especially I guess in this month, do something to break the cycle. Do something completely different. And how do we know if we're doing something different? Is that it will feel a little bit uncomfortable. It will feel unnatural. What you might be doing is like just, go for a half an hour walk. And, people that are in this mindset of like, no, everything is half an hour. No, everything is already allocated. And I cannot waste half an hour for what? What's the purpose of this walk? So do things that in your mind have no purpose. Do things for the sake of doing it, not because there's any immediate result, benefit.
Production value.
Yeah. Just do it for new ideas to come in. Do something. And it doesn't need to be 30 minutes walk. It can be something else that, it's kids. We do it often, right? We play for the sake of playing, not for a specific outcome. Right? But in that, there's so much magic. There's so much wonder. It happens to me so many times because for me personally, it's also a delicate balance. There's a part of me that is very organized and structured, and I love that. And there's a part of me that is completely opposite. I really have these two parts, and they're always like, it's a dance. It's a dance. But I love these parts when I allow myself really to either to do nothing that seems to have like the magic and the creativity that comes from there. It's the best things that I was able to create always came from giving myself time for unorganized, for destructuring everything, and amazing things show up from that.
Right. For structuring unstructured time
Yeah.
into your calendar.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And to that point, this week, we've been talking the last few weeks about the Omer and the different challenges and opportunities it brings that are unique to this time period. This week, we're entering the 5th week of the Omer. So it means we have 3 weeks left, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Am I right? Am I right? Yes, I'm right. You would know better than me, right? Wednesday, we begin a new of the Omer. And again, typically, it's a time where we suggest to people to really focus on spiritual work, not necessarily starting new businesses, new ventures. It's not a time to sign contracts, get married, buy houses, anything that you want to be fruitful in the long term. It's better not to focus on it during this period. Yet at the same time, there is this window that opens up this week. And I think that goes back to like the abundance of paradoxes that exists in the teachings of Kabbalah, is that in this time that's typically perceived as a low energy time, we have one of the highest energy days of the year. That's this Saturday night and Sunday. And we call it Lag BaOmer. It actually, on the Kabbalistic calendar, in the counting, the days of the Omer represents a level that is really, the Kabbalists compare it to like immortality, that it can, on one level, it's allowing us access to infinite light, infinite blessings. And the reason I'm throwing it out there, I know it's such an intangible or impractical thing. And as always, if you want to learn more, I'll put something on the front page of our website, weeklyenergyboost.com, so you can stream with us and get more information. But I think one of the most beautiful teachings about this day is that the gates are open, and it's one of the most fruitful, most beneficial times for prayer, for asking, for growing our desire and it's like anything can happen as a result of the conversations that we have with the Creator in that 24-hour period. So again, it's Saturday night to Sunday this week. I think the The date is the 25th to the 26th of May, right? This weekend. And to really, even to prepare, to think, what do I want to open myself up for? How can I, maybe you heard something today in this week's episode, you realize, wow, this is a very sore point for you. And yet you still want to ask the universe, the creator, to support you in being more open to it, to breaking out of these beliefs or these patterns or habits, being open, anything that, you can literally, the Kabbalists teach, you can ask for anything. And just to see the contrast in, I know that so many people have been going through such a challenging few weeks. It's been about 4 weeks now where the phone calls that I get, it's just, I don't know if you experience that too, Daniel. People, everybody's like standing on the edge of a cliff. And there is so much energy that comes in that really shifts the following, I guess it's 2.5 weeks that we have left. There is definitely a lightness that comes as a result. And I just want to encourage everyone to take advantage of that lightness this Sunday. Have fun, enjoy.
It's right on point to what we talked about, because imagine
Totally.
on a day like where everything is available and everything is possible and the gates are open, where are we, right? Are we there to receive all this unlimited abundance and miracles and an overflow of blessings that the cosmos wants to give us? Or we narrow down our view on, but imagine 10 o'clock, the creator wants to send you an unexpected blessing, but you are saying, well, 10 o'clock, I'm drinking my green juice. I'm not ready. I'm not available, right? So it's like when we lock ourselves down into things and we're not opening ourselves up, then we might miss the blessing. But so the quality of staying open, and especially on that day that Elisheva mentioned, the Saturday night until Sunday night, to be open to all possibilities, the craziest possibilities. And you might be surprised what you realize you can actually obtain from the universe if we make a little greater opening for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing. I'm also smiling because you're so health conscious and make the effort to take good care of your body. So you use the juice and raw food, you pick on them, but I hope nobody's taking offense, because Daniel is definitely
I'm
super mindful
all about workout, exercise, eating healthy. If you'll get to know me, you'll
he's
know.
allowed to make fun because he's in the crowd also. Anyway, thank you, Daniel, for joining us. I'm looking forward to next week, where we'll get to talk more about how to take advantage of the opportunity next week. Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, where you can follow us on all those platforms and receive additional content. As I mentioned before, we have a website, weeklyenergyboost.com, where we often post links to where you can find out more about the things that we share on every episode, as well as the donate button that's on weeklyenergyboost.com. You can click that to support the efforts that we make to make Weekly Energy Boost possible. Thank you for all of those of our listeners who are supporting us in that way. But as always, the best way to support us is to share this episode, give a subtle message to someone who's a little bit too rigid, or who needs to open their mind up to other possibilities to access healing and strength that might be hiding under those hard and fast rules they have for themselves. And we'll see you next week on the Weekly Energy Boost.